Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I am back with another review because, as always, December is the time for reviews, for all the reviews that I have neglected to film and upload during the year. So we have some catching up to do, and today's review is of A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid, which is her YA debut novel. This is, by the way, the Illumicrate edition, which is absolutely gorgeous under the dust jacket, and which normally is the only book that resides on my bookshelves without its dust jacket. Anyway, Ava Reid, obviously, I think with this book has become clear, is now one of my all-time favorite authors. She has been already an auto-buy author for me. I think not the biggest fan of their first book is the wrong thing to say, because I still gave it 4 stars. However, there were some things about the first book that I wasn't the biggest fan of. But since Juniper and Thorn, and definitely now with A Study in Drowning, Ava Reid is now at the very top of my celebrated authors list. But let's talk about my plenty of thoughts that I have about A Study in Drowning, and let's talk about what this is about. As I said, this is a YA novel. However, in my opinion, actually, let me get to that later on my opinions, if this book is a YA novel or not. It is kind of marketed as a dark academia. In my opinion, dark academia is not what it is. It is probably the atmosphere that you would expect from dark academia. However, and I've talked about this with Scylla a lot when I read this book, and also when she read this book, dark academia, like at least half the books that are published under the genre of dark academia really are just gothic literature, but for some reason no one wants to use the term gothic literature anymore. So it's published as dark academia, not that academic. There's a little bit, I get to that later as well, but this is a gothic novel, and in it we follow Effie, who is a student at university within this country. She originally wanted to be part of the literature course. However, within her country, literature as a point of study is only open to boys. And so, as one of the highest scores on the entrance exams, she was not allowed to join the literature course. However, she was allowed to join the next prestigious course, which is architecture. And when the estate of her a short while ago deceased favorite author sends out a competition to redesign the seat, the house, the mansion of said deceased author, she takes part in this competition and she wins. And so she is sent to this very dilapidated old mansion, and there she kind of finds out that not everything is as it seems. And together with another student from the same school as hers, or the same university, they kind of try to find out the secret of the author and of the mansion. So I said that this is not YA, maybe. To be honest, it's published as YA, and as such, I would say it is YA, but it very much is YA on the older end of the spectrum. Like, when I read this, I read Effie as like 18, maybe 19 years old. Maybe that's also me though, because I know that at least in the US, I think, you end high school a few years earlier than we in Europe do. And so most university students, when you come here, like, you hardly get any university students, first year university students under 18 years old. And it's not that uncommon to have people who are 19, 20, 21 years old, especially if they're boys that have to do civil service. So 1 year after high school, they have to either join the military or do like civil service with the ambulance, like driving ambulances or stuff, or working in retirement homes and things. Or a lot of people, you know, take a break after high school and don't directly enter university. So it's not that uncommon to have people who are 19, 20, 21 in university in the first year of university. So maybe that's why in my brain Effie was older. I don't remember if it was ever mentioned how old she actually is. And then the other thing is, writing wise, I think actually Ava Reid is the perfect example on how blurred the lines between YA and adult are or have become. Because writing wise, I don't see that much difference between Juniper and Thorn and this one. This one is maybe a little bit more straightforward rather than Juniper and Thorn. It's maybe a little bit more quote-unquote basic or less metaphorical. You know, the images that it uses to describe certain situations. But aside from that, there's not that much difference between the two books, at least from what I remember of Juniper and Thorn. And then the last thing is, if you start reading this and go into this as a YA and expect a very fast-paced story, because YA stories often are more fast-paced than adult stories. Adult stories, not that adult stories can't be fast-paced, like you have the romance genre, you have mystery, you have not thrillers, I don't know, but you know, there are certain subgenres that are faster paced, but a lot of times, especially fantasy stories, are more medium to slow paced compared to YA. This one is not a fast-paced story. This is very much a story that takes its time to get started and to be told. So yeah, that just to be aware of that. Aside from that, this is just once again the perfect example of Ava Reid's very evocative writing, very lyrical writing, very beautiful writing. I just adore the way she finds the words to describe what is happening, really. Absolutely gorgeous. Also, once again, Ava Reid is a master of themes and of using metaphors for her themes. Like, it's not as strong in this one as it was in Juniper and Thorn. I mean, if you want to know, I don't remember if Scylla actually did a review of Juniper and Thorn. I know she wrote a paper on it and on the use of food and greed within Juniper and Thorn. So I think she did a review. So if I can find it, I will leave it linked down below. And so if you want to know all about the metaphors in Juniper and Thorn, go and watch that. It's not as strong with this one, but it's still there a lot, especially within this house that, you know, holds a lot of secrets. But that's also what makes it very gothic for me, because gothic literature a lot of times centers houses and centers houses that hold the secrets of its occupants. So, you know, I'm very much of the opinion that it's gothic literature rather than dark academia. Also because while there are some themes, especially towards the end, that are commentary on academia and especially how women are treated or were treated within academia, not just academia, but also just generally how the, not abilities, but successes of women are treated compared to men's. It's not at a level where I would solidly put this book into the dark academia genre. Most of the setting also isn't at university. Basically, you have like the first 1 or 2 chapters set at university and then the last chapter set at university. The rest of it is just set at this house where there is some research focus, but like not that much. So I would say this is gothic literature with dark academia as well as fairy tale influences. So once again, we do get to see a lot of influence from like folk tales within this book as well, which obviously once again was also the case with Juniper and Thorn as well as The Wolf and the Woodsman. I actually kind of want to reread The Wolf and the Woodsman right now, because like both A Study in Drowning and Juniper and Thorn aren't just 5 stars, they are 5 stars. They are like, I love these books and I will talk about them and gush about them until the end of the earth. 5 stars. Something else, and I would say like look at trigger warnings for this book. Once again, it's the case with all of Ava Reid's books, a lot of the story revolves around predatory men and how women are treated by such men, which also comes from, like, Ava Reid has talked about being a survivor themselves. So yeah, there's just, be aware of that this is in here as well. It's a lot less, like, I wouldn't say it was that graphic in Juniper and Thorn. Like, it's a lot more subtle within this book than in Juniper and Thorn, and obviously the focus isn't there as much, which I think also is partially due maybe to it being a YA. But in connection to that, something that I absolutely adore is how Ava Reid takes the trope of the YA main character that is, to a certain degree, maybe, I mean, she's not naive, Effie isn't, and I also wouldn't say she's not aware of her physicality or how she physically looks, but you do have this YA main character that by the male characters is constantly called beautiful and enthralling and gorgeous, which, you know, is a trope within YA. But within this book, Ava Reid does this absolutely amazing thing of twisting this trope and subverting this trope into something predatory, because her beauty is constantly turned against her. And her beauty, to a certain degree, has made her, by the beginning of the book, has made Effie into a victim that has to reclaim herself and has to reclaim her narrative. And it's just so well done. Like, if you want to read books, if that is something that would be cleansing to you, that go through the themes or go through the mental state that survivors of sexual assault have, then I think Ava Reid is the person to turn to, or the author to turn to. However, if that is something that you cannot handle, be aware that that's something that you're gonna encounter probably in all of her books. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be in Lady Macbeth as well. I don't remember how much of it was there within The Wolf and the Woodsman, but it was there at least a little bit. So yeah, and I think part of why that storyline for Effie works so well is because I do think, at least to a certain degree, that Effie is at least somewhat a self-insert character for the author, because, and I can't show it better than with the author photo here. I don't know if it's, is it? Let me see. I think it's not blurry right now, and this is Effie. So yeah, I do think that Effie, to a certain degree, at least some of Effie's experiences are self-insert and are a little bit autobiographical. It's kind of funny, actually. It's like, when we want to talk about it negatively, we usually call it self-insert. If we want to talk about it positively, we'd call it autobiographical, but I'm not talking about it in a negative way. I do think self-insertion for the author is a valid writing technique. So yeah, that's it on that. Something that I find very interesting with Ava Reid is how my biggest reason why I gave The Wolf and the Woodsman 4 stars is because I really wasn't feeling the romance, and I kind of really wasn't a fan of it. By now, both with Juniper and Thorn, as well as with A Study in Drowning, I am just a really big fan of the romance. Like, they are not fantasy romances by any way of, like, or any definition of what fantasy romance is. I would say they're like slightly more than a minor subplot. So in Juniper and Thorn, maybe it's there a little bit more, like, more present than it is in this one. But something that I find very interesting is how the romance is partially a clue to the self-development or to the character arc of the main character. So the romance to a certain degree, and it's something that if you don't enjoy that, you won't enjoy these books, but to a certain degree, the romance is a tool for healing for the main characters, and they're like a symbol of the healing of the main character, where they are finally able to, you know, no longer just be their hurt self, but also move on a little bit and allow themselves contact with the world outside them again. And I think that's why the romances work so well for me. And that's, I think, why also the romances, like both of the romances, I would say there's a little bit of insta love, instant infatuation type thing. Like they don't have a lot of time to develop. The stories don't take place over that long of a time, but because of the kind of role the romance takes within the bigger picture, I'm very much able and like happily able to look past that. It's not about how fast the characters fall in love with each other. It's more so about what the romance and what the connection that the main character has with the other person, what that symbolizes within the bigger plot or within the smaller character arc of the main character. So that's why I think I absolutely love the romances. And that's why I also maybe want to reread The Wolf and the Woodsman and see if maybe I just overlooked something there. But yeah, aside from that, was there anything else? Once again, there's like fairy tale elements in this story that I absolutely enjoyed. I love Ava Reed's writing. I love Ava Reed's writing. I love how evocative she is of different things. I love her use of themes and of pictures and of symbolism, and it's just, she's just a great writer, and I honestly cannot wait for Lady Macbeth, which is gonna come out in 2024. So yeah, if you read this book, tell me in the comments down below what were your thoughts on it. If you haven't read this book, did I make you want to pick it up? If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman or genderqueer person per month, will be left linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!